let's get started then. Sorry, had some issues with the headset here. But thank you very much for joining today. And today I'm going to take you through some Azure Cloud Security Governance and some best practices in this area. So as you know, in the world today, security and cloud security is becoming more and more important than ever before. So that's why we will discuss briefly around some of the things you can do to get started here. So just a little bit about myself, based in Denmark, Copenhagen, been working in security consulting for many years. Now I am currently employed as a CISO for something called Insurance and Pension Denmark. I'm a security MVP. I'm working together with the Center for Internet Security and Azure Foundation Benchmark and a lot more. But let's move on. It's not about me today. So the agenda today is a bit packed, but let's see. So first I want to set the stage here. I want to see where to start, the tools available for you guys. We have identity and access management, the architecture, some best practices, and then some challenges and solutions to that, and some trends. So first of all, what is governance and what is compliance? So I think it is important for us just to set the stage here to briefly understand the differences between governance and compliance. So in the context of IT and cybersecurity, governance and compliance are two of the most key concepts to help organizations manage their information systems and data securely. As you can see here, so governance is in IT at least, is more about ensuring that the organization's information and technology supports and enables the achievement of its business strategies and objectives. Whereas if you look at compliance, then that is a lot about adhering to, it could be laws, regulations. For example, now some of you might have heard of DORA, you have heard of NIS2. So some of these things are things you need to comply to. So together, these two, they ensure that the organization's IT resources are used in a responsible and secure manner. So this is very important. Just moving forward here. So because how does security actually fit into this, right? We have compliance, governance. We even have cybersecurity governance, which is a different ballgame than the IT governance. So let's just try to set the stage here again. This is very high level, but hopefully you get an understanding of it. So with IT governance, you have a much broader scope. The IT governance is a broad concept that encompasses the entire spectrum of information technology or IT decisions and processes within an organization. So it's broad, it's everything, right? It's strategically aligned, so it means that it ensures that IT resources and systems are effectively used to meet the organization's goals and objectives. Whereas cybersecurity governance is more focused on the scope. So cybersecurity governance is specifically concerned with, you might have seen your company's policies, information security policies, processes, controls, and all that are related to information and data security. It also has the risk management. IT governance also has risk management, but again, at a higher level. Here in cybersecurity governance, you really look at identifying, evaluating, and mitigating risks for your organization's assets. You have also compliance and protection. So again, the compliance, you need to adhere to certain regulatory compliance or regulatory frameworks, standards. And this is where the governance here ensures that organizations actually are compliant with this, right? So yeah, the role of security here, as you can see, it's really integral to both of them. Need to see here. So the security is a strategic asset as well, and really it comes down to that security needs to be integrated in every single thing that you do, right? But the core focus of IT governance is not security, whereas in cybersecurity governance, it is security. But anyway, let's move on, because I think the next one here will give you a better introduction to the Azure Cloud Security Governance. That's why we're here today, right? So, so what we're gonna go through here is a brief intro, then why we need security governance in Azure, and then an overview of governance structure in Azure. So here, I think it is, some of you might have seen it, some of you might not, but again, the objective of our cloud governance is that effective cloud governance regulates all the cloud use. It mitigates the risk we have around it, and it also streamlines the cloud interactions across the organization. And why do we want to do that? Well, we have a strategy, a business strategy, and really we want to align our cloud usage with that strategy, and we want to reach our business goals faster and with fewer setbacks, right? So security can never be a roadblock in this. Security is an enabler. Remember, if we did not have a business, we do not have the need for security, right? Because the company will not earn money and we will all be out of jobs, basically. How do we do that? So we have to set up guardrails. And these guardrails, they can be in terms of policies, it can be procedures, it can be tools. It's really all about establishing somehow some kind of control that you have. It can be preventative controls, administrative controls, so forth. That's not so important right now. The important is here that the successful cloud governance, it really prevents all unauthorized and unmanaged cloud usage. So that's the goal that we are aiming for. We need to control everything that is happening and can happen in our cloud environment. This one, security governance. And this is, I know there is a lot of different governance. I have been mentioning IT governance, cybersecurity governance, security governance. Really, the takeaway here is that you need to focus on the business goals of your organization. This is what is highlighted here. So security governance, it bridges your business priorities with the technical implementation, like architecture, as you can see, it's the second one, the standards and the policies. So the business goals and risk provide the best direction for security. And this is very important to highlight. Again, back to your business is driving sort of the security. Security is an enabler for the business, right? Not the other way around. So that this ensures that the security focus on the important efforts of the organization. So you have to focus on what matters for the organization. It's not what necessarily is the most fun to work with, but it is what taps into your overall strategy. And I would say one thing that I often see, at least when I was a consultant, that you need to remember to get the upper management sponsorship and or approval on this journey, right? Because it can really help you eliminate many of the roadblocks that you face. If we look at the architecture side here, the second block in the pyramid, then it is very important to translate all these business requirements and risk into something technical in the environment. So we really recommend from a best practice point of view from Microsoft and also in the cloud industry in general, to have a unified view across your entire enterprise estate instead of splitting it up, cloud versus on-prem. That usually doesn't work too well, because attackers, they don't care about your internal processes, right? They always follow the path of least resistance to reach their goal, which also means that they will, without hesitation, move laterally between your cloud and on-premise environment if they can. So really try to focus on unifying everything. Right? So when you talk about security, it's not so much about if it's cloud or enterprise, because most enterprises today, again, what I've seen, they have some kind of hybrid environment, right? That spans over on premises, which can contain lots of legacy software, lots of legacy hardware, And then you have the cloud as well, which is, the new modern stuff where you have software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, and so forth. So it's really important to understand this. Then we get down to the hope to the security posture management, and I think this is a fun quote that I saw, that hope and reporting problems is not a plan. Right? Remember that it's not a plan just to hope you're doing stuff, or maybe to report problems once you see them occur. So governance in the cloud must have an active component that continuously engage with other teams. Right? This is not a security versus developers or versus other teams in the business. It's a joint effort to secure both your on-prem and your cloud environment. So it's very important to understand that. And I have often seen that this is very silo-based. So again, I encourage you to open up this and to sort of broaden the knowledge about security and see if you can get other teams than just security teams on board on this journey. So security posture management is really an emergent function. It represents a step forward in what we call the long-term convergence of security functions. These functions, they answer the simple question: how secure is the environment? That's what we need to know. That's usually what the management needs to know as well, right? And to understand this, we need to include, of course, like vulnerability management, compliance reporting, all these kind of things. And that this is where use the tech available for you. All of you that use Azure today, you have a lot of free tools available, and I will get into that later on. But it just tells you that the cloud technology now provides so much visibility into the whole security posture management and also like the assets coverage that you have within the cloud. So use it, because the visibility here, that is the key difference to what you have on-prem, where things might be a little bit more muddy. So really the ideal state here is that governance is the heart of what we call continuous improvements. We need to continuously improve our environment. And that the business, they keep improving the application, they keep patching, they keep, creating new features. We need to do the same from a security point of view. So this improvement, it really engages your whole organization to constantly improve the security posture. So remember that all the cloud resources that we have, it changes very fast, especially in large environments. So a static inventory, like using Excel or something like that, is really not possible in a dynamic cloud environment. You need to use some of the cloud native tools available to you. Again, your organization, they must focus on continuous discovery of assets and asset types. As I said, in the cloud, new types of services are added regularly. It could be a new service type in Azure, or a new resource type in Azure. It can also just be that, the workload owners, they spin up something because they think it's interesting. They read a blog or something. So it's very important that your inventory management is a dynamic discipline and not just something static. And you, as part of the governance team, or at least your governance team, they need to really continue to discover these asset types. They might even want to put in, policies to not use all the new things here. You have the compliances, feed the bear. I know it's a little dramatic, but really compliance and reporting is something you do sometimes to external people as well. But in general, you focus on your internal policies, and the basic requirement are it could be, for example, with DORA on IS2, that you need to report back to authorities if something happens. And the mandatory requirements are like feeding a bear in the zoo. If you don't feed the bear every day, it will eventually eat you. So remember that. it is very important to be up to date here. So look at this. How do we actually get started with this? So it might be a no-brainer, but I have it here anyway. You need to create a team, a cloud governance team. That can be part of your CCOE, your Cloud Center of Excellence. It can be a completely other department. It doesn't really matter, but somebody needs to have the responsibility of cloud governance. So here you need to basically select a team of individuals to be responsible for your cloud governance. And then again, you need to understand the basics. I mean, why are you here? I mean, and I guess why are you doing what you're doing in the cloud today? And that's probably also why you're here today in this webinar. You need to familiarize yourself with what you're doing in the cloud, what is cloud governance, and why it is important for your organization that you actually have cloud governance. Because when you have that understanding, you can start building these guardrails. And remember, it is maybe you have heard about it, but there is what all the CSPs, the cloud service providers, call a shared responsibility model. It's not just for Microsoft; it's also for Amazon, Google, Oracle, and so forth. And it really emphasizes that the cloud providers, they manage the infrastructure security, like the data centers, the physical security there. But users, and that is also your end users, they must protect their data, the access, and all the applications. It's not just something that the cloud provider will do for you. So that is also often maybe a myth or something that I hear, a false premise that just because we're in the cloud, we are secure. That is absolutely not the truth. But you have a lot of tools available for you to make it secure. If we move a little bit ahead, then we do have strategic planning, of course. You need to plan what you're doing. Again, like everything else, preparation is the key for this. You have risk assessment. You need to identify all the risks that you see. You need to see if you have the applicable policies for this. And in general, it's you have to prioritize the risks that you find, and it can be all kind of categories of risk. I mean, risk is not just a threat that somebody can breach your environment. It can also be a regulatory risk. It can be a monetary risk. It can be a risk of cost, operation, stuff like that. So it's not all, even AI, for example. So it's not all related to somebody breaching your environment. Then you have defined policies and controls. So again, now that you have started to understand the journey, you need to start defining the policies, the information security policies it can be, but it's also the policies in Azure. And I will get that in some of the next slides. But really to make the user only do what the user is supposed to do. Nothing more, nothing less, right? You are in control of the governance here. So you are basically putting down the playing field and the rules for playing. You need to then operationalize this governance. And that is often the most difficult thing, because a lot like this is very theoretical, but how do we actually get started on this? So it is, it starts with, implementing some structures for your team and understand who is actually responsible for what when we start doing this. So you need to have very clear defined roles, and you can use a RACI matrix for that, for example. But the most important is that it is in a structured manner. Then you have continuous monitoring. And that is, as it sounds, really just you need to continuously monitor, measure your whole cloud estate. So if you more have Microsoft, they have, and I provided a little link, I guess the presentation will be shared afterwards. So here there is a cloud governance checklist that you can look at here. and don't want to spend too much time on it, but it's a really effective tool if you're starting your journey, and see if you can cross off these boxes before you, or while you enable your team here. So this might be interesting for some of you. What cloud native tools do we actually have in Azure that can help us? Well, we do have quite a lot, but before we get there, I just want to mention something that Microsoft is really pushing right now. It's a term called Cloud Security Posture Management, CSPM, which is, as you can read here, an automated tool that identifies and fixes security risk in cloud infrastructure. It provides continuous monitoring, visibility, and remediation of security risk across diverse environments. So the thing is here that Microsoft have this, other companies have this as well. So it's really just important that you use some kind of CSPM. It can be either from Microsoft, Defender for Cloud. It can be, Palo Alto Prisma. It can be many other. It doesn't really matter. The most important is that you're using something. So the benefits here, it is that it can help organizations to identify and remediate security risk before they can be exploited. This is really what we want, right? And as you can see here, the risk of not having it, the risk of not having monitoring in general, right, is that it can result in data breaches, compliance violations, and reputational damage. Which of course can lead to significant financial loss and legal penalties, and we do not want that. So Defender for Cloud. Many of you have probably heard about this, and it has this fancy word, right? It is a comprehensive cloud-native application protection platform, CNAPP. I believe this is a Gartner term, but yeah, nevertheless, what is Defender for Cloud? It is acknowledged in a very acknowledged tool, I would say, around the industry, and it provides sort of end-to-end security for cloud environments, and it really aligns with the latest security practices and compliance standards, and that is why I use this a lot, and I recommend you also use it. It is kind of one of the forefront runners of CNAPP solutions. You do get something for free in here. Actually, if you have not seen it, you have something called Foundational CSPM. And this is a free option. You cannot disable it, so you just have it for free. And Foundational CSPM is basically just a basic cloud security management tool. It has some features like compliance check, vulnerability assessments, and configuration management. Where you get some bang for the bucks is when you upgrade it to the paid Defender for CSPM, and I will not go into pricing here, but if I remember correctly, then it's around $5 per resource you enable it on. But nevertheless, this really extends your Foundational CSPM by integrating a lot of insights. It can be to your DevOps environment if you're using GitLab, GitHub, Azure DevOps. You can integrate it to something called External Attack Surface Management. You have the Cloud Infrastructure Entitlement Management, CM, that's another thing. And then you have workloads to manage secure posture, assess risk, and in general, that you can take action on this. So it's a very powerful tool. Remember, I would say that this is not something where you should just enable everything in here, because there is a cost to this. So also do a controlled implementation. Understand, do we actually need Defender CSPM on the subscriptions? All of this is enabled on subscription based, but you might pay for the resources that you have within the subscription. So the cost can easily run wild if you don't do it in a controlled manner. But yeah, begin evaluating your current cloud security posture, and then identify your vulnerabilities and assess your resilience with this tool. It's really, really good. What else do we have here? So we have within Defender for Cloud, you also have something called Secure Score, and that is really it's something based on recommendations, and it's a risk-based approach. So that's also always good, right? Where you can actually start working with the most critical recommendations first. You can also do an approach where you look at remediating the secure scores or the recommendations, that the controls that will give you the highest lift in your score. It's really depends on how you want to grab this. You also have something called attack path analysis. So if Microsoft, they scan your environment with Defender for Cloud, and they see that you have a storage account that is publicly exposed to the internet, then you can see it in there and you can take action. You can also see if some attacks has been ongoing with the alerts. So really, it's all about understanding how all of these features they work together. Then you have the possibility to use something called regulatory compliance in there. It's really just a mapping towards some of the standards. I do recommend when you start just to focus on the Microsoft Cloud Security Benchmark. That is a very good start. Start working with that, start remediating the recommendations that it comes with there. And then once you feel more mature, you can enable some of the other frameworks or standards in there. That could be, for example, CIS, the Center for Internet Security, Azure benchmark, the foundational benchmark. But yeah, it's really up to you. Right. Yeah, just here. You go to Cloud Native tool, number 1. Here, so how do we operationalize Defender for Cloud, or MDC? So to start off with, it is important that, as I said, you select the Defender plans in there. So what is a Defender plan? Can be Defender for Key Vault, Defender for Storage, and so forth. You should only enable the Defender plans you need, again, in a controlled manner. What do you actually want to protect and monitor? Then the next point here is that you need to define roles and responsibilities. And this is really essential to the whole operationalizing Defender for Cloud. This includes, as I mentioned earlier, identifying who is actually responsible for specific tasks, who is responsible for the whole Defender for Cloud implementation, and also maintenance after go live. And I have seen that often it works best if you assign these roles and responsibility based on the individual strength and skills you have in the team. So remember, people are different and they have different skill sets. Some might be more technical than others, so try to use those strengths to your advantage. The next one here is our processes and procedures, and that is, of course, like with everything else in IT, very critical. It includes, defining the workflows. How do you work with Defender for Cloud recommendations? How do you work with alerts when there is something? So also like incident response plans, stuff like that. You also need to continuously monitor and improve. So this is back to some of the other things that we have said. You can go in and you can tailor some of the tasks in Defender for Cloud. I'm not going to deep dive too much into that. Just make aware that this is there in case of you want to do it, and if you have a lower risk profile than others, you might be able to put more regulatory compliance frameworks in there. And then back to prioritize the alerts you get, and definitely the attack path. So if you see something in there, look at it. Is it a false positive? Then archive it. If it's not, then take action. And use the built-in workbooks in there. So workbooks are sort of a dashboard in Defender for Cloud, and you really get a lot of benefits already, a lot of cool workbooks. So please start to utilize that. Jumping forward here to Azure Policy, and Azure Policy is probably something that you might all be aware of, but it's almost one of the backbones in the Azure Cloud Security Governance. And I'm just gonna go briefly through this. So again, let's try to take a step back. Do you remember what cloud governance, the success criteria was? If not, then we have it here. So it is really to prevent all authorized or unmanaged cloud usage. This is where Azure Policy can help us. Azure Policy helps to enforce all the organizational policies, standards that you have, and it can do it at scale in the cloud. And another good thing, it is free and it's available to all customers. So it's something that you can right now go into your Azure portal and you can start working with. How Azure Policy works is really that it evaluates resources and actions in Azure by comparing it, or at least comparing the properties of those resources to business rules. And then you ask, what are business rules? I have not heard about that. Well, a business rule is really something that you have defined in your cybersecurity policy. It can be that you are not allowed to deploy resources outside West Europe. That's a business rule. So very simple, the business rule is then described in a JSON format inside these policies, and it's also what you might know as Azure Policy definitions. So how do we have effective management and enforcement with Azure policies? Some of the common effects that you can use Azure policies for are to deny certain things, right? But the example we just had, we want to stop people from deploying outside West Europe. We might also just want to audit if somebody is doing something that is non-compliant to our policy. It's not going to stop them. It's just going to tell us that they are non-compliant. You have deploy if not exist. This is usually where you can use it to deploy something on a configuration basis. You cannot use it, or at least let me say, you should not use it to deploy resources. You should only use it to deploy configurations on existing resources. That can be enable locking on a key vault, for example. You can use a policy with deploy if not exist here. The same with audit if not exist, and so forth. And then of course you can also disable your Azure policy. Some of the common use cases here, I think this is can be relevant for some of you, but it is, as I said, you can limit the allowed regions. You can also enforce the policies, of course, to have the consistent application of taxonomy of tags. So, for example, sometimes tagging is a nightmare in Azure, right? And sometimes looking at orphan resources, you don't have a tag on it, so you don't know who this resource belongs to. So really, when you delete it, or if you dare to delete it, you are going to wait until somebody is shouting, and you want to avoid that. So that is where you can use Azure policies for tagging. You have the regulatory compliance, as I talked about. So this is really to enforce your organizational standards and to comply at scale. You have security. This is where you can send diagnostic settings to log-analytic workspaces for further analysis. You have some cost management. So again, you can enforce and prevent that costs are running wild. So it's really, really a powerful tool with many different use cases. I also want to mention that a lot of these policies are already available as built-in policies. They are controlled by Microsoft, so the whole life cycle lives and dies with Microsoft. If you need to have a policy that does not fit one of the built-in policies and you have a use case for something else, you can build your own custom policies. I do recommend that you bookmark the link down here that is acadvisor.net. That is definitely my go-to Azure policy site. It is very powerful. And then when you get mature enough in your Azure journey and you're starting to do infrastructure as a code, you can actually do policy as a code. There's a very nice GitHub project called Enterprise Azure Policy as Code, or EPAC. So I definitely recommend you to look that up if you're mature and you're doing infrastructure as a code. Key questions to ask here, and just briefly go over them, at least some of them. So it is, again, which team is managing the overall cloud governance? Are they using Azure Policy and Defender for Cloud for governance? What is the current knowledge level in here? And the important one, what are the measures of success? We'll jump on, because we do have identity and access management here just briefly, but many consider identities to be the primary parameter for security. So this is a very big shift from a traditional focus on network security, where networking was your parameter, right? But now we're in the cloud, everything is publicly exposed, or at least close to that, right? People are bringing in their own devices. You have new cloud applications and so forth. So this sets a lot of pressure on your identity and access management. You need to do that right. So in here is very small, but again, you get the slides afterwards. I'm not going to go through all of them, but some of the best practices here is definitely to integrate your on-prem directory, and that's most likely your Active Directory to Entra ID. Do not sync high privilege accounts in AD to Entra ID. There could be domain admins, for example. You most likely would like to turn on password hash synchronization. It's a feature used to sync user password hashes from on-premise AD to cloud. And this is it helps to protect against leak credentials and replay attacks. You want to have you want to utilize SSO wherever possible. It's just a seamless journey for your users. Use the conditional access policies to manage and access corporate resources. You can block legacy authentication protocols. You can enforce MFA for admins and so forth. So it's a very, very powerful tool. Some of the last things here are, enable privileged identity management, PIM. So that's so you can have something called just in time. So if you enable an admin role, let's say you have a service window, so the role will only be active for like maybe 2 or 3 hours if that's what you have set, instead of having it as a standing access, having access to the admin role all the time. Then you can activate it here. Use cloud-only accounts for high-privileged admin accounts. So that's if you have a global admin account, then do not use it on your enterprise account. Use it on a separate account that only exists in Entra ID. You should have a break the class account. So imagine you have probably seen the fire alarms around, that they have they have a glass that you break and then you can pull the lever. This is sort of the same thing here. In case you have an emergency, you use these accounts to get in. It could be that you have lost access to your environment somehow and the global admin has also lost access. Then these are your last resource to go to, and that's, of course, you need some strict governance around these. Very important thing here is to control your identity lifecycle. Like with everything else in IT, you need to control your lifecycle. It doesn't matter if that is from developing an application or having servers. You need to understand when an identity joins, then it's very important that you give them the right permissions. When they move to another department, then you need to deprovision their permissions from the old department and give them new permissions. And then, of course, when they leave, and this is probably the most critical one of them, right? You need to ensure that their permissions are revoked and their identity and accounts, they are really disabled. This is where some of the, let's say, more nasty attacks that come from. Yes. A little bit about the architecture. I will not deep dive too much into it, but if you have not seen this before, then I definitely recommend you to start looking into Azure landing zone architecture. This is best practice, is part of Cloud Adoption Framework, and this will significantly improve your way of doing cloud governance. There are a large bunch of Azure policies that you will get with this framework that you can deploy on different landing zones, subscriptions, management groups, and so forth. And it will really help you accelerate your cloud journey here. Not gonna spend too much time on this. So some of the best practices for designing secure Azure architecture is obviously to use this Cloud Adoption Framework. You get everything handed there for free. It's very comprehensive, and it's like a living document, so Microsoft, they keep updating it. Really use that. Use secure coding libraries, scan for vulnerabilities, use a threat model, try to reduce your attack surface, and you can do that with Defender for Cloud, right? Use MFA. scan monitor your activity logs, things like that. So this is it's very, I would say actually very easy to get started. And I also provided a link that you can go to here. So and start this journey. This is really just to say that people, processes, technology is still something that lives on, and this is, always the most important thing. And in that, in that flow, so people who is doing stuff, like here, you need to educate your teams. You have your processes, how is stuff done, and then you have the technology. What we do stuff with. Sorry. So that is really like you should first focus on the people, processes, and then you should select your tool and the technology afterwards. And then I and Microsoft, we have added the architecture here as well. So yeah, it's very important to focus on educating your people for sure. Just some very brief here about the cloud frameworks cloud security frameworks you can use. So I mentioned already cloud security benchmark from Microsoft, the Azure Foundation benchmark from CIS. You have Mitra Attack, that is more if you're sitting in a true security department, I would say, not maybe not so much about governance. Then you have the Cloud Security Alliance Security or STAR, Security, Trust, Assurance, and Risk. And then obviously you have the ISO 27017, which is a supplement to 27001 and 2. This is cloud focused. So that's of course something that's worth looking into if you have not already done that. Just wanna, because we're running out of time here, and I want to focus on some common challenges and solutions that we have here. So really some of the challenges is to recruit and retain your security experts in your team. It can be very difficult journey because there's a big shortage. You have compliance requirements, very difficult as well with all the new regulations, especially here in Europe, where the EU, they're pushing more and more regulatory compliance frameworks and whatnot upon us. Misconfigurations, that's really one of our biggest fears and issues in Azure and in cloud in general. That's how most attacks happen. You have the access control with RBAC and identity and access management. You need to ensure that things are encrypted and you need to patch, of course. So again, back to you need to some of the solution and best practices to these issues, right? It is to educate your teams, really about the people. This always starts with the people. Then you can start looking at your processes, assign accountability, update your incident process, and so forth. And then you see latest on here, like number 14, then you can start encrypting things, the technology about it. So really people, processes, technology, it's very important. Here, I'm just gonna look a little bit into some of the trends that we're seeing right now. It is to unify security architecture. It is to use security posture management, governance, and strategy alignment. And we have been touching upon those trends already. But some of the future predictions, something that is already happening right now, is of course with AI, and that it is that the use of AI and machine learning it will likely increase. To automate threat detection. We have seen it with Copilot for security, for example, and it will definitely reduce the time between threat detection and remediation. A heavier focus on zero trust architecture. So remember, zero trust is that you assume breach and you verify everything or each request, and basically treat your network as an open network, although it's of course not. But you assume breach. You assume that somebody is already inside watching. Then you have more regulatory compliance. I just see this something that comes up in the future. Again, most people, they have hybrid cloud environments, and we have a skill gap here. So some tools, I'll not go through them. You can see them afterwards. Just a summary, and then I promise to keep my mouth shut. But again, remember, cloud governance is to control the use of cloud and avoid unmanaged use. The compliance here is to adhere to regulations and laws. I definitely recommend you start using Azure Policies and Defender for Cloud. You get a lot of things for free here. Use the recommendations in Defender for Cloud, use the built-in policies that you have, and prioritize these recommendations. Also, you can use something called governance rules in Defender for Cloud to automate the notifications for owners when they have non-compliant resources. Use logging, no-brainer, but again, you need to do that. So logging in Entra ID, for example, the audit logs there, they only have retention of 30 days. So please use a log analytic workspace and control your identity and access management setup. And then lastly, use the Microsoft community. There are a bunch of different communities, and it's very important. So that's it for me here. And I would like to thank you for listening in. And if you have any questions, then
Hi. Okay, so we have two questions from the audience.
Yes.
First one is, hello Niclas, what tools to manage and government do you recommend? There's plenty, but doing it without them may be hard.
Yes, what tools to manage and govern? Yes, so as I said, I definitely recommend using Defender for Cloud. As I said, I know it's repetition, but if you get it for free, at least many of the things, and some, of course, then you can start to use the more advanced plans in there, and you will pay for that. But you really have a one size fits all, I would say, portfolio in there for your Azure tool. So I don't know if that answered your question, because there, as you said, there are many, and it's very difficult, to do it without it. I'm not sure I completely understand the question, but I would definitely say use Azure Policies and use Defender for Cloud, as I mentioned here. This is a very good start. Then you can, of course, if you have budget, buy other tools like Palo Alto Prisma. You can look at Sunray if you want to have something with identities. But those are my recommended ones.
Okay, so the second one, how hard is to manage and governance cloud in small to big organization?
Yeah, very good question. There is, of course, a very big difference being in a large organization versus being in a small organization. So when you are in a large organization, you have a lot more resources, meaning you have a lot more manpower, even money, right? When you are in small organizations, people, they need to have multiple hats on, meaning that you might only have one or two people doing security, doing governance. Maybe they're doing everything within security, cybersecurity and governance. So it's really about prioritization, and that can be very difficult. But just remember that if everything is a high priority, nothing is priority. So really try to move into a risk-based approach, where you try to identify the risks that you see and then you act on the risk, rather than doing things on a non-risk basis. I hope that makes sense. Otherwise, again, feel free to reach out to me. I will be happy to have a small discussion afterwards to clarify on this.